Hey everyone, in this video we're going to continue going through Ritchie's Fabulae Faciles and the Jason and the Argonauts story. So at this point we're on part 5, which is called The Anchor is Weighed. So you want to remember, so far in the story, the last thing we were doing in chapter 4, or part 4, was looking at how Jason builds the Argo. And one of the things he did while he's building the Argo, the ship, is he sent out messengers for basically people to join him on his expedition, right? So he's looking for people, trying to gather up people who will go with him because he doesn't want to go by himself. And at this point, he has the Argo basically built. He just needs the Argonauts, right? The people who are going to sail it. So before we dive in and go through this chapter, or this part of the story rather, like I always tell you in these videos, the first thing you want to do is make sure you have the vocab down. So you've heard me say this a million times. You can either make your own vocab list, pre-read the story, make a list, or just go online. You can find a bunch of them on Quizlet, different places, a commentary. I always say Jeffrey Stedman has a great commentary for this, but you'll find vocab lists, turn it into flashcards, a Quizlet, whatever it might be, and practice it because it's really hard to understand what's going on if you don't know what the words mean. So it's always your first step. The other thing you want to do is make sure that you're trying to read this aloud. Bring it to life. Don't just read this in your head. I'll read it to you as we go. But again, my pronunciation is nothing spectacular. You should practice your own. If you're a student, find a classmate, read it to them, have them read it back to you. This way you're working on your speaking, your pronunciation, and your listening skills. These are all great things you never want to turn off when you're learning Latin, right? Don't just read it in your head. It's never your best bet. Okay, the other thing I would recommend is when it comes time to reading the story, try the read and reread method. I say this all the time, but you read all the way through the story, you write down any problems you might have. Then when you're done, right, you get to the end of this part of the story, go back and look at where you went wrong, things you didn't understand, right? If it's vocab, it's very easy, look it up. If it's grammar, it's a little trickier, but again, this is where a commentary might help you. And try to unpack where you went wrong and what you're not understanding, and then repeat that process over and over again. And on the second, third time, whatever it might be, you should be able to get through the entire story, or this part of the story, start to finish, without having any trouble. That's how you know you really understood what's going on. It's a great way to practice your Latin. Okay? So if you haven't done that, pause the video. Make sure you've tried this on your own. You've at least read through it. You've tried to translate it, and use the rest of the video just as a double check to make sure you're on the right track. Okay? So the story starts like this. You have interea is dies apetebat quem iason pernuntios edixerat, et ex omnibus regionibus Graeciae multi, quos aut rei novitas aut spes gloriae moebat, undique conveniebant. Okay? So we have meanwhile, right? So while they're building the ship, right? And this is, what we had said before, Jason was looking for the Argonauts, right? The sailors. So meanwhile, the day was approaching, right? Is dies apetebat. So the day was approaching, which Jason, edixerat, he had like declared, is kind of one way to do it. So the day which he had declared through messengers, pernuntios, right? That's what we were saying before, where he sent out his messengers. He was trying to gather up people to join him on this adventure. So now the day when everyone is supposed to show up is arriving, right? It's approaching. And ex omnibus regionibus means from all parts or all regions, right? From all regions of Greece, Graeciae. You have multi, right? Many men. You're implying men there. So many men, or many people, you could say. And it's many men whom either, right? You have out, so either or. And the subject here is novitas, which means like newness or novelty is probably the best way to do it, and space, which means hope, right? So these are the two things. So you're saying they're men whom, right? It's a direct object there. Either the novelty of the affair, the rei novitas, the novelty of the affair, or the hope of glory, the space gloriae. So it's either the novelty of what's happening or the hope for glory, moebat, right? It was moving them, right? Making them come join this journey. So when you put it together, you have many men whom either, right, again, the novelty of the affair or the hope of glory was moving. What did those many men do? They conveniebant, they convened or came together undique, from all sides, from all parts, right? So people are coming from all over Greece to join up, and it's telling you why. Either they think this is going to be a great chance for glory, or they're just excited about something new, right? They've never heard of an adventure like this, so they're curious. Then you continue, you have traditum est autem in hoc numero fuisse Herculem, de quo supra multa prescripsimus, Orpheum Cytharoidum praeclarissimum, Thesium castorem motosque alios quorum nomina sunt notissima. So when you put this all together, It's kind of like a side note from the author, right? So from Ritchie, right, the Kirtland version. But you have tried to mess, right? So it's handed down, or it's reported is kind of an easy way to do it. It's reported, moreover, that in this number, in hoc numero, in the number of people who showed up, was Hercules, right? And then you have a side note. It's Hercules about whom, de quo, so about whom many things per scripsimus, right? We have written supra, above, and it's referencing the story, right? Ritchie's Fabulae Faciles. So it's saying we've already talked a lot about Hercules above, right? The Hercules story. So he was one of them. The other person, right, who is in this number is Orpheus, right? Famous name. And Orpheus is described here as the Cytheroidum praeclarissimum, the most famous Cythera player. And again, if you haven't heard about Orpheus and Eurydice, you should look it up, right? This is the same person, the famous Orpheus. Then you also have Theseus, right? Another famous Greek hero. You have Castor, right? Castorem, another, again, famous Greek hero. And then you have Multosque alios and many other, right? Many others, whose names, nomina sunt notissima, whose names are very famous. And again, I'd encourage you to look up the full list of the Argonauts. There's a lot of famous heroes on the ship. So it's not just random people that show up and try to join Jason, right? The Argonauts are some of the most famous heroes of all time in ancient Greek mythology, right? Hercules, Orpheus, Theseus, Castor. These are famous names. So again, I'd encourage you to take a minute at some point and look up everyone on the ship. There's a lot of famous heroes there. But either way, he kind of puts together this dream team of famous Greeks who are going to join him on his journey. Then he continue on, and you have ex his Iason, quos arbitratus est ad omnia pericula subeunda paratissimos esse. Eos ad numerum quinquaginta delegit et socios sibi adjunxit. Dot dot dot. Right, it kind of continues on the next part. But you have from these, right? Ex his means out of these, right? Out of all these people who showed up. And this line I will say is a little bit tricky. But you have Jason, right? That's your subject. He arbitratus est. So he judged, right? So here, when you're looking at that, the arbitratus est is a deponent verb, right? Arbitor. So you just translate it as perfect active, right? He judged, right? Who did he judge? He judged those whom, right? Quos, right? Those who were, esse. So you're going into the indirect statement here. So you have, he judged those who were the paratissimos, the most prepared. Okay, so that's kind of the easy part of the line. Then you have ad omnia pericula subeunda, which could be a little bit trickier. So it's saying he judged those who were the most prepared for, right? And you have this gerund there coming from subeo. So subeo, again, means to like undergo, is kind of one way to do it. So it's a gerundive, rather. It's a noun and a gerundive. So you want to probably just translate it as ing, right? Plus a direct object in English, or it's kind of the easy way to do it. But it would mean something like those who were the most prepared for all the things, omnia, going to be underdone, right? Or undergone, rather, which is kind of a roundabout way of saying it. But he chose the people who were the most prepared for everything that was going to happen, is really how you'd kind of simply put it into English. But literally, it would be something like who are the most prepared for all the things or all the dangers which were going to be undergone, right? And again, pericula there is danger. So all the dangers which were going to be undergone. So he's picking the people who are the most up for the task of facing the dangers on the trip, is really what it is. And again, it's a little tricky there. You have the gerundive. Just take your time and kind of put it all together. The odd there is really showing like the purpose of it. So you can kind of just put it together and you'll end up with the right answer. So he picks out of all these people, right? He judged the ones he thinks are the most prepared, right? And then you have delegate, right? So he selected them, right? Those, right? The people that he thinks are the most prepared. And it's ad numerum quinquaginta. So up to the number 50 is literally what that says. So he picks about 50 of them. So in other words, nearly or just about 50 is really what it's getting at. These are going to be the Argonauts, right? So he selects about 50 people. And he adjunxit, he joins together the socios sibi. So he joins them together is really what's implied. So it's almost like you're missing an eos between socios and adjunxit, but he joined them as like allies or comrades, however you want to do it, sibi, with himself. So he picks his 50 Argonauts, he joins them together, they're going to be allies, they're socios, right? And now they're ready for the trip, right? So he kind of picks his all-star team and now he's ready to roll. Then you continue the line, right? So you have tum paucos dies comoratus ut ad omnes casus subsidia comparare, nauem deduxit, et tempestatem ad navigandum idoneam nactus magno cum plausu omnium sole. So now we get the end here, right? So he picks his 50 people, and then right after he's done all this stuff, you have comoratus, so having delayed. It's a perfect passive participle there. It's referring back to Jason. So having delayed paucos dies for a few days, right? And why does he delay? You have the ut clause there, right? So you have this purpose clause. So he delayed so that he might comparare, he might prepare, right? Is what you're looking for. The thing he's going to prepare is subsidia. So subsidia there is the neuter accusative plural. So you could say assistance supplies is kind of where I went with it. I think that's easier to put into English. So he prepared supplies ad omnes casus, for all causes, all cases, all eventualities, maybe is kind of the right way to do it, or the easiest way to do it. So he's trying to get all his supplies together so that no matter what they face, they're going to be fine, right? That's why he delays for a few days. And then when this is all done, deduxit navem, he launched the ship, right? So they're ready to go, and they're getting out there, right? They're going off into the sea. Then you have et tempestatum, right? So tempestatum here probably doesn't mean a storm. It's probably easier to put it as weather, right? You don't really need like a storm to set sail. That wouldn't be great. But you have nactus, so having attained, right? It is probably the easiest way to do it. Again, it's a perfect passive participle from non-kiscor, which means like to obtain, right? Is again probably the easiest way to do it. So having attained idoneam tempestatum, so having attained suitable weather, then you have ad navigandum. And again, we've seen this before. When you have ad plus a gerund, you're showing purpose, right? So having attained suitable weather for the purpose of sailing is really what it means. So the navigandum you can translate as sailing, right? The ing. And since it's showing purpose, I would say for the purpose of sailing. So having obtained, suitable weather for the purpose of sailing, he sold it, right? That means to like loosen. It's usually, you see this a lot in reference to sails. So the easiest way to do this is he set sail, is really what it means. He loosened the sails, right? So you drop your sails and you're off and running. He set sail, and then you have magno cum plausu, right? So another way to do that would be cum magno plausu, with great applause of everyone, with the great applause of everyone. So in other words, everyone's cheering, everyone's happy, and now they're off on their journey, right? And so the Argo is built, it's stocked, he has the Argonauts, and now they've set sail to go get the golden fleece, okay? So again, not the longest chapter, but there's some trickier stuff in there, and I've said this before in the videos, like the Jason and the Argonaut story is a really good way to get used to more complicated grammar, right? That's what it's really working on. You see some indirect statement in here, we're seeing gerunds, gerundives, different things, right? Purpose, there's a lot going on, but just take it a little bit at a time, and hopefully, like I said, if you were able to get a translation that's pretty close to what I did, and it makes sense to you, again, not that mine's perfect, but it's probably a good sign that you're on the right track and ready to move on. So keep practicing it, keep reading through, and if you're able to translate this on your own and it makes sense to you, like I just said, that's a good sign, a nice flag that you're probably ready to move on and go on to the next chapter. Good luck.